Sijanifikiria ndio nimekufa.
Manhunt launched for administration policeman for his beastly assault on his expectant wife.
Nilipiga simu nikaambiwa hazijatoka. Jina yangu inaonekana kweli nilifanya mtihani lakini haijatoka.
We expect the ministry to have sent capitation money to schools. Part of this money was used to run the exams.
Exams body on the spot over delayed result slips.
And bomb scare spreads panic at Nyahururu law courts.
This is KTN Prime with Yvonne Okwara and Wilson Buru.
A very good evening and thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime. This is certainly the most comprehensive bulletin. We trust that you've had a fantastic Easter weekend. Now, following our expose on Jicho Pevu and the inside story on Sunday and Monday, we have received overwhelming response on the process of election in Kenya.
That's right. And so tonight we want to sustain this discussion on Kenya's electoral system. Our managing editor, Joe Ageo, is in our talk studio tonight with a panel of election experts. And here to give us a short preview of that, Joe, what can we expect from your conversation tonight?
Yes, indeed, a detailed discussion, Yvonne, on our electoral system. Some people saying perhaps it's too early to talk about 2017. My guest will be saying whether indeed it is too early ever to prepare for a good election. And I have with me an eminent panel here consisting of Ambassador Jack Tumwa, who served in 2007. Prior to that as well, the Electoral Commission of Kenya, defunct now, but he still has his ideas on how we can make our electoral system better. We also have Winnie Gushu, who is also an election expert, served with the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, one of the commissions that a lot of people think perhaps was the best election we've ever had, electoral commission we've ever had. But we also have Peter Aling, who is an expert on governance issues. So a very illuminating discussion, I hope, lined ahead for you, Yvonne.
Indeed, Joe, thank you for that. And like you mentioned, is it too early to start talking about the elections, or should we start planning? And so in line with that, we ask you to join in our conversation on social media. The hashtag we're using tonight is Facing 2017. Remember that hashtag on Twitter, Facing 2017. We welcome your comments and contributions to our discussion throughout this bulletin.
In the meantime, let's look at other stories that we have prepared for you tonight. The Administration Police Command in Meru is seeking to interrogate one of their officers accused of mercilessly assaulting his expectant wife with a beer bottle.
The wife says she was left unconscious after the night attack, which followed a series of strange demands from the husband, as Ian Wafula now reports.
This woman thought that the next time she was checking into a hospital, it would be to deliver her baby. With an 8-month pregnancy, all she wanted for herself this Easter was to be with her husband, an administration police officer at the Gatimbi AP station in Imenti Central. And so she traveled all the way from Western Kenya to be with him at his place of work in Meru County. But it would be a trip she would live to regret. She alleges that later in the night, she had a disagreement with her husband, who was then drunk. Her reluctance to comply with instructions for sexual favors she considered unreasonable allegedly resulted in violent kicks and blows. After which, she says, her husband did the unthinkable. Pushing a beer bottle into her private parts, she was left unconscious. Her husband's colleagues then rushed her to hospital.
We may not accept that kind of a situation because that one is inhuman. Even if it is the wife, we don't expect an officer to assault the wife to the extent of causing physical injuries.
The doctors at the hospital say they managed to save the unborn baby.
Yeah, the pregnancy is safe, everything, the fetal viability is okay. There are not much problem with the fetus.
The husband has since been summoned by police for questioning as investigations into the incident continue. Ian Wafula, KTN Prime.
Now, the Kenya National Examinations Council is on the spot for delaying to release the result slips of the 2013 KCSE candidates. The Parliamentary Committee on Education says it is illegal for head teachers to issue rubber-stamped pieces of paper as result slips. KTN's Joy Dorin Bira with that report.
She sat her exams in 2013, hoping to add it onto her achievements considering she was a mature student. But that has not happened for 32-year-old Angeline Adego, who currently works as an office assistant. Reason, her result slip has not just been delayed, but her results are also missing.
The system shows them I register my exams because they only ask me my index number. And they told me my name is there, but there is no result.
Angeline Adego is just one among those who are yet to see their result slips since the release of KCSE results earlier this year. Already, the National Assembly's Education Committee Chairperson Sabina Wanjiru Chege has slammed head teachers for issuing students with mere stamped pieces of paper as result slips.
In order for somebody to be told, write on a piece of paper what you got and then take it to the NEC. I think the examination body is a NEC, and this is really common sense. And if they are telling the student to do that, that is wrong. It has not come to our committee, but that is wrong.
The Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPET, alleges that some schools delay in issuing students with result slips due to a deficit accumulated last year after schools incurred costs NEC should have paid for in preparation for the students' examinations.
Somebody has slept on the job, and this must stop. We want the students to not to be anxious. We want parents not to be anxious. We want schools not to be anxious. Everyone must take responsibility. So in my view, I feel it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that the result slips are available.
When we contacted them, the Kenya National Examinations Council NEC insisted that all candidates who sat last year's KCAC have result slips at their schools except for Rift Valley and Western provinces, all of which should have their results by the 26th of April 2014. Joy Dorin Bira, KTN.
The Kenyan Somali community has now launched an online campaign seeking to have their voice heard. They continue to claim that they are victims in the government's Operation Usalama Watch. KTN's Ashamwilu reports.
An online protest by Kenyan Somalis has gone viral. The campaign, launched on a Tumblr page, is denouncing what has been termed as ethnic profiling by Kenyan authorities in the ongoing security operation. The photo campaign, dubbed Kenya, I Am Not a Terrorist, features major concerns by Kenyan Somalis who have been subjected to rigorous security checks by Kenyan police seeking to flush out illegal immigrants and those linked to terrorism. Some of those featured includes this man who says, "I was in Kenya before Kenya was a Kenya, and I shall be in Kenya till I die." A footnote on his photo says the man was born in 1946 in Eastleigh, 17 years before Kenya attained independence. Offline, the tale is similar among Kenyan Somalis who are living far from the capital city.
Mimi niko na national identity card na ndio, na hii ni kudhibitisha kwamba mimi nilikuwa kamshala wa Kulale. Juzi usiku mimi nilishikwa, nikapigwa pingu na polisi na LP, tukatetana mbaya, nikawachiliwa karibu na police station.
Try and appeal to the community so that if I have information, I can give it to them. Lakini officer akikuja kuniharas, officer akikuja kunigonga, how will I give out the information?
Because I'm a Kenyan, I'm a Somali born in Kenya. Hata lugha yangu sijui. Upande kitambulisho na passport tunasumbuliwa. We have to. Najua Kijaluo, Kizungu, Kiswahili.
Despite these allegations, however, Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku is not changing his strategy anytime soon. Lenku has now ordered local administrators in the counties to ensure that illegal immigrants are not migrating to those areas in search of identification documents.
We know foreign individuals are now getting out of Nairobi because of the pressure and the heat exerted on the issuance of this travel and identification document. But we want also to send a strong warning that Kisumu like any other part of the country, will not become a safe haven for acquisition of those documents.
In Eldoret, 9 Somalis found without identity cards were arraigned in court. Senior resident magistrate Caroline Watima ordered that the suspects pay a fine of 5,000 shillings and be taken back to Kakuma camp, or alternatively serve a 2-month jail term. 3 suspects also appeared in a Mombasa court for being in possession of an illegal firearm and 264 rounds of ammunition. 8 others were arraigned for being in the country illegally. Even though multiple arrests have been made in the ongoing security swoop, Kenyan Somalis insist that their rights must be respected. Asham Wilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Now, since the return to multi-party politics in Kenya, 4 general elections have generated intense criticism with claims of rigging and other malpractices.
The question being raised now is whether the problem is with the politics or the institutions entrusted with running of Kenya's elections. KTN Samogina sought to find out the take of analysts after the revelations in our special investigative series 50+1 on the Inside Story.
The vote has been described as a weapon or instrument of regime change each election period. But since the scrapping of the single-party state, most if not all elections have been dogged with malpractices since 1992, when Kenneth Matiba claimed he was robbed of victory. The closest Kenya has come to a smooth multi-party election since 1992 was in 2002, when Uhuru Kenyatta conceded defeat to former President Mwai Kibaki. Begging the question, is the country's electoral system so fundamentally flawed that it is impossible to get it right?
We are caught up in this trap of not being good losers.
In the advent of a one-party state, the ruling class introduced the mlolongo of the queue system that was criticized as being skewed in favor of the president's loyalists. The country would later advance into the use of voters' register called a black book. But after the 2007 bungled elections, the black book would be ditched for an electronic voters' roll of the poll book. Kenya had advanced to the levels of Ghana and South Africa in using technology in its election, or so it seemed.
We are a long way, but we had gone by 2002, we had reached a very, very good level. Then in 2007, in the middle of 2007, between May and the end of the year, most of the experienced commissioners, and there are still, some of them are still alive, were sent home. The lot that was brought in by the people who are now in power, they meant that they should be favored. And that did not help at all. It brought us into chaos and people fought.
But even with the advancement in technology, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is taking flack for conducting a shambolic election. Just like its predecessor, the defunct Electoral Commission of Kenya, the opposition wants IEBC disbanded for undermining the sanctity of the vote.
I don't know why anybody sat down and said the Electoral Commissioners must serve for 6 years, non-renewable. When you have been, I was in the Electoral Commission for 15 years, and I had just got the gist of it. What does experience really mean? The Ghanaian chairman and vice chairman serve the commission until they are aged 65.
Now we have got laws that determine how people are going to get onto that body. And we are aware, of course, that even those who are a little grumpy today about the IEBC, its composition and how it has functioned, they did actually participate in the process that put in place those people whom they are telling us today that they do not want.
But even as pressure mounts for the disbandment of IEBC, election experts warn that the answer is not the disbanding of the commission, but rather in fixing the loose ends in the commission's structure. Experts say, unlike the past where election deaths were the incumbents' ammunition against other candidates, electoral institutions have been set up and dispute resolution mechanisms equally established, and it is these institutions that require strengthening.
Until we get down to our problems and polish up the section, even as I've seen in the paper today, people are saying, oh, the commission should be disbanded. How many times are you going to disband the commission? you will disband, and the load that comes in might just be the same load.
Our first business.
Nonetheless, there is a general consensus that even in developed democracies, no election is foolproof, but it is how the electoral inadequacies are handled that determines the credibility of the polls.
It is also true that it's not just here in Kenya or in Africa where that kind of defectiveness obtains. We can remember that in the year 2000, there was contestation about election outcomes in the United States in the presidential race between Al Gore and George Bush.
IEBC will face another test in 2017 that will either redeem its reputation or break its back if it survives the onslaught over its disbandment. Samogina, KTN.
That brings us to our BQ tonight. We're asking, should the IEBC be disbanded? Should the IEBC be disbanded?
Well, you've heard the take of analysts in Samogina's story. What do you think about this one? Please send us your comments on Twitter at KTN Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara, at Wilson_Mburu. Remember, the hashtag we're using for our discussion tonight is Facing 2017. On SMS, you can also reach us on the number 22155. Start with a yes or no, followed by a brief comment, and we'll continue to sustain our discussion on the elections. We want to now just give you a brief history of the state of elections in the country from 1992 to date. So let's take a look at these figures and statistics here. A history of hiccups of elections in Kenya. We start off with 1992. Now, this was the first multi-party election since the reintroduction of multi-party politics in Kenya. And of course, by the time this was happening, the political landscape in the country was characterized by some tribal and ethnic-based violence prior to any election period. Now, let's take you to the 1992 election. Now, just before that, there were flare-ups of violence in several parts of the country. Of course, first off, one of the hotspots in the country was at the coast, where we saw election violence that was taking place between natives of the coast and those from upcountry who were perceived to be outsiders. This led to the infamous Kaya Bombo killings. A commission of inquiry was instituted into that. We did not get the results of that, and there were also other hotspot areas like Molo and Burnt Forest. Now, these are some of the claims: ballot stuffing, targeted ethnic violence like we have just told you about in Molo, Burnt Forest, and at the coast. And of course, after that election took place in 1993, Matiba, who was the loser in that election, filed a petition in court. Now, that petition was dismissed by the court. Why? Because he did not personally sign that petition. At the time, he was physically incapacitated, had given the power of attorney to his wife, and was unable to sign it. That decision was made by Justice Riaga Amolo, a decision he would later regret, because during the vetting of magistrates and judges, he was declared as unfit to serve due to that decision. Let's take you now to the next election. 5 years later, we will take you to 1997. Now here, also the same patterns that we saw, and due to the fact that there were no results that were received from the commissions of inquiry, many of the instigators of the violence were said to have been emboldened by the fact that nothing happened in 1992. Aside from the reported cases of violence around the country, there were also concerns over the voter register, reported cases of vote buying in this election. And of course, there was also the case of about 1.5 million to 2 million registered voters who were disenfranchised. Why? Because there was a delay in the release of their ID cards, and this led to some discontentment with the system at the time. After the election, another election petition, 1998, filed by Mwai Kibaki. This petition was dismissed. Again, this time because Mwai Kibaki was unable to serve the president the petition in person. He did that through a Kenya Gazette notice, and the court ruled that he was not able to do that and should have actually served President Moi at the time personally. He took that to a court of appeal. Again, it was rejected. They upheld the lower court's decision. Let's quickly take you to now 2002, which was declared by the EU as Kenya's truly first free and fair elections. Amnesty International even came in to say that there was less poll-related violence compared to previous elections, 1992 and 1997. But there were still some pockets of violence prior to and after the elections. Amnesty International quoting some things here: sticks, stones, swords, a sword, a pistol, 2 rifles that were used in Mount Elgon area. And then we move on to 2007. Many of us remember this one, the infamous post-election violence that took place. The international community was in wide agreement that there were massive errors in the vote tallying process, was marred with incompetence and bogus tallying. We know the violence that erupted after that, leaving at least 1,300 Kenyans dead in that post-election crisis. Hundreds of thousands displaced. Now, this was the first time in this election that we were able to actually put an economic value to the violence that took place after the election. Now, get this, from the closed businesses that took place, 174 billion shillings was lost from closed businesses alone. We've not even factored in the reduction in foreign direct investment. We've also not talked about the drop in numbers of tourists coming in and therefore dropping in foreign exchange. So this was the first time we're able to get that tally. It still, of course, was not complete. This has been a history of the elections that we've had in the country from 1992 to 2007, but we now want to take you to 2013, and for that I want to hand you over to Joe Argeo, who is our managing editor, and he is of course in our talk studio. But before that, let's remind you of our big question tonight regarding this whole story. We're talking about the disbandment of the IEBC. Do you believe that this electoral body should be disbanded? Send us your comments on Twitter at KTN Kenya. The hashtag we're using for our discussion tonight is Facing 2017. I now want to remind you then again, yes, here's a recap of that big question. Should IEBC be disbanded? Should IEBC be disbanded? Send us your comments on Twitter. Like we said, that hashtag is Facing 2017. You can also get in touch with us on our SMS line, which is 22155. Start with a yes or no and tell us, of course, why you think it should be disbanded or not. So keep your comments coming in on that one. We want to now hand you over to Joe Ageo, who's in our talk studio with his eminent panel to carry on with our discussion. Joe?
All right, thank you very much, Yvonne, and thank you very much. There's a litany of many different problems there, lady and gentlemen, and I'm just going to start with you. Jack Tuma, Ambassador Jack Tuma was in fact commissioner with ECK. 7 years down the road and looking at all that, what's going on in your mind?
Well, I want to start by borrowing from Gijopev yesterday. One of his commentators, I think that was Judge Krekela, made an observation. He said, you do not expect a free, fair, and a credible election in an environment which is polluted.
Yes, he said you cannot have an honest election in a dishonest environment.
In a dishonest environment.
Are we that dishonest in this environment, Jack?
That is a place that we have to focus on as Kenyans. Let us honestly examine our environment. I think there are so many things that we can do to improve our elections by looking at things like the legal, looking at the political players, the parties. We have got the legal framework in place. But one can ask, why is it that our legal framework which is in place, we've got a constitution which we are all crying for, it is in place. We have got the Election Act which is in place. We have got a Political Parties Act which is in place. How come with all these things? Because before 2002, we were saying if we had a proper legal framework in place, perhaps this would push us beyond. But now we have got this. I think the problem is the enforcement of what is contained in our legal framework. Are we enforcing it?
Winnie, what do you think? I mean, what is the problem? We can't have a situation where we have all these perennial complaints. Right now we've had, apart from the presidential petition in the Supreme Court, we've seen numerous cases going on at different levels. And there must have been something that we missed somewhere down the road. Why do we have problematic elections every time?
I think, as I say, let us not go into this blaming people, blaming the ECK, blaming the IEBC. Let us look at the entire environment. What causes this problem?
We'll come to this blaming business, including the calls right now for disbandment. Winnie, what are your thoughts?
I think we just need to get serious. And I think we've proved that we can actually have and hold credible elections in this country. And I think what we need to do is to take planning very seriously. and to be able to understand what is the roadmap.
Well, there are people who are saying it is too early to start telling people about 2017.
And election planning starts on the day election results are announced. If you wait to start preparing for elections on the third or fourth year, then it's not going to work. And I think that's been the major problem. We have not recognized and understood that elections is not an event, it's a process. And therefore we have to start preparation right at the beginning. There is no one election that is similar to another. So you must learn from a previous election what went wrong, what went right, and then you plan ahead. The political environment keeps changing every single day. And the political environment you had in 1997 was different in 2003, was different in 2007,
but there's a point
was different last year.
That Gabriel Mukele raised there about this idea of either changing people over in the middle of preparing for elections, as you say, or disbanding commissions. I mean, you were in the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, and a lot of people thought that was a good combination of people. It was one of the best commissions, I've heard some analysts say, and yet by the time we were going to 2013, we had totally different people there. Is that a problem that we need to be talking about now?
We just get back to that principle of honesty amongst ourselves. When people do well, they're removed. When people fail, they're removed. It's just a dishonest society. And what we need to do is to just evaluate and say, do we really believe in good elections? And for me, it's not about the people you put in the commission. For me, I believe in building institutions that hold, so that it's not that Winnie is there today and when she leaves, it's going to collapse. Or that Tuma is here and when he leaves, it's going to collapse. What we need to do is to build a strong institution. And what happens is, if you keep shaking the institution when it's just about to get on its feet, then you're taking it back to zero. The Electoral Commission, the defunct ECK, was there are commissions that have actually built a foundation from ECK. I can talk about the Electoral Commission of South Africa, learned great lessons from ECK. I can talk about the Electoral Commission of Ghana, learned a lot of lessons from ECK. I can say the Interim Independent Electoral Commission found a lot of foundation and base from which we learned and built the institution. So for me, I think I believe in building structures, I believe in building processes and strong institutions so that they hold, so that it's not looked at, this commission is so-and-so or so-and-so. You cannot run an institution.
But we started it when we started asking political parties to name sort of representatives to the party. I mean, how are you ever going to have complete faith when all we do is to ask people who are clearly partisan to nominate people to a body that's supposed to be independent?
Now, I'm going to say something that's going to sound very bad, because I want to find that one person in the world who's known to be non-partisan. I've never met. All of us are associated with some group
Okay,
or the other.
Peter, is that a fair comment that everybody's associated with everybody and therefore we just need to get people wherever they came from?
But, look, we'll deal with that. I think that's a good comment to begin with. Because, of course, even those of us who approach the elections, as from a non-partisan point of view, we still vote. We still vote. We still have our candidates at the end of the day. But the fact is, we do not openly demonstrate partisanship in the process. That is precisely what my sister Winnie is talking about. And from that perspective, I do agree.
But we have a very polarized environment. I mean, right now, there are a lot of people who are saying, why even talking about 2017? Perhaps they could find someone saying, yeah, the candidate I voted for is in office. Why are you talking about now? Let them do their work. How do we get beyond that and say, well, we are talking about the next election because we need to prepare for it? We're in a very polarized environment, are we not?
That's precisely the problem that we need to seriously reflect upon. If we have to fix the problems we have, we must go back and rely on the lessons that have been generated through the past elections. From my own experience, I see a sense in which we have undergone phases in building our electoral process. You look at the period since 1992, when we had multi-partism, coming into our political environment. The growth then with the old laws, the old constitution, until 2002, when we showed a sense of maturity, and that was it. We were demonstrating some sense of growth in managing our politics, in managing our electoral affairs. Subsequent to that, we've had a situation where we've changed the constitution, we've changed our laws, we've changed institutions. And that is the context within which last elections took place. And we have to grow from there. And this is it.
Let me get to specifics here. We've had a situation where people say, now we don't have faith in all these people. Let's go for technology. And we've seen us try to adopt technology. We have had BVR kits. Never mind what happened to them, the EVIDs that we were trying to use in identifying people when they went to vote. And then we have a big argument about technology. We have a big argument about servers and all these things. Jack, the ECK attempted, they recommended, I had Gabriel saying that some of the things you had left in process were discarded.
Technology, there is no way we can avoid. We have to go with the technology. We have to bring it on board. I think the biggest mistake that the IEBC made was to bring in technology at a time when the people were not prepared for it. They didn't have sufficient time to train. It is very important, if we are going to use technology, to equip people sufficiently so that they know how to use that technology. It is important that the other parties, the political parties, the other actors, the officials, get very, very familiar with the new technology so that when it goes out, it is applied. But IEBC didn't have sufficient time to employ the technology so that it gives the result that was expected.
But Winnie, you want to say something about
I want to say something about technology, and to say that we have learnt very great lessons. Number one, why I said that an election starts immediately after the other. Right now, we should be having an evaluation of why the technology failed. And we start dealing with it from now. One of the big problems that we have had, and is going to be, and if we don't address this, is going to be procurement. For instance, in this year, before the end of this year, I would like to see election material already procured so that there's enough training time, people can familiarize with it, and you demystify the myths about technology.
Someone will say, well, these people are already planning to rig 2017. Look, they brought ballot papers around
you see,
or something.
The thing is about communication. I think the Electoral Commission has a big role to do civic education. And when I say that elections planning starts now, I'm not saying that people go to the streets and start campaigning. I'm talking about the Electoral Commission body. They are full-time, they have staff, they go to work every day. People are going to ask, so what do these people do for 5 years when there's no election? But there's so much work to be done in terms of preparation.
But isn't that all related, Peter, with the whole idea of an independent commission? Because I think a lot of people wouldn't raise questions if they thought the commission was truly independent and whatever they were doing, buying materials, everything, that we can depend on those guys, they will not favor anyone when an election comes. I mean, how do we deal with that perception? Because a lot of people actually don't quite see commissions as they always claim that someone infiltrated, someone did this and the other.
I think that is the serious undoing that we have, in terms of how we focus on the electoral process, is that we approach it from a very suspicious perspective, and that already poisons the environment. Look, I think it's a combination of so many things that we have to concentrate on. One is that we want to see an institution that is able to manage the electoral process effectively, efficiently, and with that fierce independence. That is precisely what it is. But beyond that, there has to be, ingrained in it, the technical processes that work well. And that brings us to the concept of technology that we are now embracing in our election process. It's not about technology. It's not about whether we go manual or do things, but the entire thing depends on the credibility measures that we put in the process. That is what it is. The integrity measures that we put in the process, that is what it is. That we are able to, open the process from where we begin up to the end. And opening the process means that we engage the people. And that is what we talk about when we say communication, communication, communication. You must be able to openly tell the people, inform the people that this is what we are doing, this is why we are doing it, this is how we are doing it, and this is what has come out of it, and these are the lessons, and now we want to infuse lessons to improve that going forward. In that way, people don't suspect you at all.
Okay, because we have actually very little time left here, I just want to get your thoughts, each one of you, as we draw this to a close. If you were to change one thing, we have 3.5 years or so about how we've done our elections. We've had questions raised, for example, about when we go to the Supreme Court, whether we have enough time for the country to really digest what's going on there. 14 days. Some people who are speaking to in Ghana say, no, that is, you guys must be geniuses in Kenya for you to pull something off in 2 weeks that took them 90 days to resolve. Do you think that there is one thing, Jack, that if it were up to you, you could change that would make us a better country in terms of how we conduct our elections?
I think my only recommendation here is that let's Kenyans look at our laws and respect our laws. We have to enforce them. We have to find a way of enforcing the laws that exist.
Thank you very much. Winnie?
I think it's a process of communication and trust in the electoral process, trust in the commission comes when people know what's going on. So I want to repeat, it's the process of civic education, people understanding the process and carrying the people along as we move along the whole process.
Peter?
Elections is about the people. It's not about who is managing it. It's not about political parties. It's about the people. So to change this, moving forward, make the electoral process more open and involve the people of Kenya with you in all aspects, at all stages. That is what needs to be done.
All right, thank you very much. We will have to end it there. We've been speaking to my panel here, speaking about lessons from 2013 and even before that, and thinking about how we can make 2017 a better election. Remember, you can continue this conversation online. Our hashtag we're using this day is Facing 2017. You can also use all the different platforms that are on your screen that answers the question that Yvonne and team have been asking, whether you think it's a good idea to disband the IEBC. But for now, I'll hand you back to Yvonne and Wilson for the rest of the bulletin.
Thank you for that, Joe. An interesting discussion coming out of your panel, and we're getting many reactions from some of the statements made by the persons you have been speaking to. And carrying on with our conversation, let's take a look at some of your feedback tonight. Derek Onyango on Twitter says, Kenya can hire the service of a foreign electoral chairman because we are too tribal and polarized to be fair. Hashtag Facing 2017. Do you agree with Derek Onyango's thoughts? Keep your comments coming in on Twitter.
Tim Followback says no, that's what was done to Kivuitu's team, and nothing changed in 2013. Change how the process is done. Let's know what you think. The hashtag again is Facing 2017, and we'll of course continue sharing your views as the bulletin continues. Right now, let's take a short break. We'll be back after that.
You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you for staying with us.
The Central Organization of Trade Unions has rejected a proposal by the Labour Ministry for Kotu and Pusetu to co-host this year's Labour Day celebrations. And as Rita Tinina reports, Pusetu is just as happy to go ahead with their Labour Day plans without Kotu.
8 days, the country will join the rest of the world in marking the 49th International Labour Day. But it appears it will not be business as usual this year.
We'll have Pusetu, we'll have Kotu.
The new kid on the block, the Public Service Trade Union's Pusetu, was launched 2 weeks ago. With 3 cabinet secretaries in attendance, the new union could well boast of government backing. And now, Kambi wants Pusetu to take a front row seat during the May Day celebrations.
Wakija wote waongee watu wa Kotu, waongee watu wa Pusetu, na serikali iongee. Iko tabu.
But Francis Atwoli, the Central Organization of Trade Unions Secretary General, will hear none of that.
And the Labour Day is organized on the principles and mandate of Kotu's executive board.
When you come, you personalize this issue to be a Kotu issue. There's no law written that it is a Kotu issue. It is a Labour Day for all Kenyans. including Atwoli. Atwoli is also a Kenyan, or is he a Ugandan?
According to Kambi, the ministry has formed a joint steering committee that brings together Kotu and Pusetu to prepare for Labor Day.
There is nothing like joint committee on Labor Day with the Pusetu.
The Pusetu Secretary General Dr. Charles Muhwaya says the new union does not need Kotu's green light to be part of the Labor Day celebrations, whose venue the Cabinet Secretary does not know just days to the event.
We've not decided on the venue. We have booked only one venue, and that venue is Uhuru Park. Other venues are free for Pusetu or for the minister or for an organization or any non-government organization or governmental organization to go and carry out its own International Labor Day.
No paying members and is not yet a federation. Kotu is daring the government to make Pusetu a key player in the Labor Day celebrations.
And we wouldn't like to be forced to if we are forced to the wall, it means that we should resist. And to resist, we will not resist as court officials. We will call out our members, who number between 1.6 and 2 million.
Kotu says it is pushing ahead with preparations for Labor Day and expects the Labour Cabinet Secretary to attend and announce the minimum wage. With Kotu unwilling to share the limelight on Labor Day, this year's celebrations may open a new battlefront for workers' representation. Rita Tinina, KTN.
We'll indeed see what happens on the 1st of May. And this is the first official trading day of the week after the long weekend. And Bonnie Tunya is here with us, is in our business studio tonight to tell us all the happenings in the world of business. Bonnie?
That's right, Yvonne. On this first day of trading, NSE has a new strategy. I'll be telling you more of that. And other news is also we're breaking down rebasing of the economy, so do stay tuned. I'm Bonnie Tunya. This is business. The Nairobi Securities Exchange is set to introduce a futures market this year. The futures exchange is expected to deepen the country's capital markets while giving the exchange alternative revenue streams as it moves forward. Here is KTN's Michael Karanja with the NSE strategy.
For close to 6 decades, the Nairobi Securities Exchange has thrived in trading equities and bonds, a job it has done with aplomb. But with the cutthroat competition from other well-established exchanges on the continent, the NSE has got a new spring in its step as it seeks to deepen its offering. The boss plans to introduce exchange-traded funds by the end of the first half of the year.
Whereas we used to be viewed mainly as the dark continent, the Africa Rising story is gaining more and more prominence. I think investors are paying more attention to frontier markets and in particular to the African continent.
In the derivatives market, the NSE plans to start with financial futures and options, which will be on indices, interest rates, currencies, and single stock futures. This gives the exchange an edge as it will now offer a variety of trading instruments of interest to corporate Kenya. A futures exchange ordinarily helps businesses mitigate against future losses arising from fluctuations in prices. This bodes well with companies that deal a lot in foreign exchange, as well as fuel importation in a bid to cover themselves from any losses. This also ensures that the NSE provides a local solution for companies that have in the past sought hedging from the international market. Already the NSE has invested 250 million shillings in the new systems to handle the derivatives market. The developments at the board come as it plans to self-list by June this year. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
The last couple of weeks have seen Kenyans treated to a new terminology in business, rebasing of the economy. Now, this is after the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics announced that it will be revising calculations of the size and composition of the economy. But what does it mean for you? What exactly is the value for rebasing? Here's Adelaide Chengole.
For the first time in almost 20 years, Kenya will be undertaking a statistical review of the economy that should see the size of the country's GDP jump 20% from 3.6 trillion to 4.3 trillion shillings. This review, commonly known as rebasing, will push the country into a middle-income nation 16 years ahead of the Vision 2030 schedule.
It's a normal statistical procedure. It is done at the discretion of those in charge, depending on seeing if there is reason. If they think that the economy has grown to the extent that some statistics have not been captured, then they rebase.
But the rebasing is a double-edged sword for Kenya. Although the country now has bragging rights that it is a middle-income country, it still depends on loans and aid, all of which could be suspended once it attains middle-income economy status.
And by being categorized as a middle-income economy, we will have serious challenges of market access because we will no longer be competing in the same league as our neighbors in Uganda, Tanzania, and other countries of the Great Lakes region.
Let's not look and say, oh, our competitor is Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, whatever. It is China. It is Indonesia. It is all Indians, you know, all this Chindia or whatever we talk about. These competitors will go and get into those markets.
And because the review is simply statistical and is not an actual reflection of growth on the ground, analysts warn that the review will not have any impact on the actual state of the economy, and the harsh realities that continue to assail Kenyans will continue to exist.
I wouldn't mind what economy I come from if my government had a strong welfare state to ensure that every Kenyan has a minimum basic access to goods and services. I wouldn't care really what statistic they're giving me, because really I don't eat that.
For the government, however, the exercise makes a lot of sense, as it will bring much needed relief to the state, which has been facing increasing calls to reduce its debt burden. Adelaide Chongole, KTN Business.
So now you know. Elsewhere, mortgage lender Housing Finance has posted a 13% growth in profit before tax of 315.79 million shillings in the first quarter of 2014, with the group's profit after tax increasing to 221.18 million shillings. Despite a difficult trading environment that has characterized by high cost of funds, loans and advances to customers increased by 5 billion shillings to 37.24 billion shillings, up from 31.69 billion shillings. But even with a drop in interest rates from 18% to 16% during the period under review, Housing Finance maintained a steady growth in its interest income due to increased loan disbursement. Total interest income increased to 1.43 billion shillings, up from 1.35 billion shillings as a result of its growing loan book. Now, income diversification boosted total non-interest income with a recorded 175% jump to 217.86 million, up from 79.06 million posted in 2013. The group generated 13.68 million shillings income from foreign exchange trading. Let's now talk matters of integration. And Kenya has over the years shown commitment towards integration of the East African community. Though facing hard-hitting challenges of predominantly being non-tariff barriers, the country has moved towards addressing the inadequacies of coordination mechanisms by establishing a new integration policy. Here's Charles Kitonga.
Despite being the lead economy in the region, Kenya has failed to maximize on the opportunities presented by integration of the East African states. Weak and inefficient institutional structures has seen a regional policy for implementing various integration initiatives non-existent. The region has equally faced challenges such as terrorism, piracy, unemployment, and human trafficking, which demand consistent solutions.
The key challenges we face involve inadequate coordination mechanisms that arise from fragmented institutional implementation frameworks.
The Ministry of East African Affairs is seeking to address these hurdles by drafting an integration policy framework that seeks to give fresh impetus to the integration process. The policy will provide the country with benefits of increased access to larger markets for trade and investment, lower cost of doing business, and free movement of labor, goods, services, and capital.
The aim of this policy and strategy is to foster a policy, legal, regulatory, and institutional environment.
Previous efforts towards this integration has seen Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda move faster into establishment of major infrastructure projects and ensuring free movement of persons through a coalition of the willing, leaving out Tanzania and Burundi. However, if the desired outcome is to become a reality, coherence of the member states is key.
It is evident that we can take this to another level and reap even more benefits by addressing the challenges we currently face.
The Common Market Regional Integration Strategy and Policy will be key towards enhancing a common customs union and establishing a joint financial market through fiscal policy in 10 years as planned. Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
This happens to be the first day of trading, so here's a look at how the markets opened on the Financial Market Review coming up next.
Let's remind you of our big question tonight when you're asking, should the IEBC be disbanded? The SMS number is 22155. You can also contact me. You can also reach us on our Twitter handles. That's Wilson_Mburu and @Yvonne Okora. I understand that we have a few tweets that we can read.
We do indeed. Keep sending your tweets using the hashtag #facing2017. Margaret, you say no. IEBC did a good job in spite of the pressure. Politicizing its performance kills democracy.
All right, let's move on to our sports studio now, where Lynn Washira is on standby to give us the latest in our sports, in what's happening in the sports world. Lynn?
Yeah, Wilson, I know, of course, you're well aware. You're one of those people who are too aware that David Moyes' reign at Manchester United is finally over. But that story and many more coming up after a short break. Don't go away. Good evening and a warm welcome to KTN Sports Today. I'm Lynn Washira. Well, the current excitement among the Kenyan sprinters about the inaugural World Relays Championships could soon turn pale. The 4x4 and the 4x100 meters athletes may miss the flight to Bahamas if they do not attain the set qualifying marks before the 12th of May. This comes after initial reports that there was no entry standards required for the World Relays. The initial celebration that engulfed Kenyan sprinters after the birth of the World Relays Championships in Bahamas is slowly dying down after the realization that the 4x100 meters and the 4x400 meters teams will have to attain set qualification standards for the Bahamas events. With the qualification deadline set for the 12th of May, many athletes' dreams may seem shattered, but AK Vice Chairman David Okio is confident the challenge will be dealt with during the national trials this Saturday.
Should anything happen that they don't qualify, we shall be advised by the coaches and what next step we should take. And at the moment, we believe they will qualify.
The 4x800 meters and the 4x1500 meters relays will, however, remain open, and it seems like Athletics Kenya may resort to concentrating on them, considering Kenya holds the men's world record. The team to Bahamas will be selected on Saturday by a panel of selectors who include Kipchoge Keino, Noah Ngeny, Coach Sammy Rono, and retired sprinter Joyce Odhiambo. Participation in the trials is by invitation only.
The coaches went by the times returned from the series. We have also looked beyond the series, like those people have been running in World Indoor and other events outside this country. So they have come up with that, and they have compiled that list.
The trials have been moved from the Safaricom Kasarani Stadium to the Nyayo National Stadium for easy accessibility by spectators. In Kiambu, drivers and their navigators are this week fine-tuning their skills ahead of the weekend's KCB Kiambu rally to be run on private roads around the county. Kisumu-based driver Chandrakant Devji is optimistic of making a successful debut.
The 2014 KCB Kiambu Rally will be the third leg of the KCB Kenya National Rally Championships. And unlike the first two rounds in Malindi and Machakos, this weekend event will be run in private farms with a mega stage set aside for the spectators. Kisumu Rally driver Chandrakant Devji and his navigator Jonathan Kosgei will be driving a GC8 Subaru in their first ever four-wheel drive race.
Four wheels are always better, stable, and they're always good on roads. Even if it is muddy road, rainy road, full-time four-wheel, good on road. 100% this time, I want to try my best to complete the race.
The rally will have 4 stages that include a 22-kilometer stretch in Sianda. Tatu City will provide 30 kilometers and another 17 kilometers in Mbio Committee. In the two-wheel category, Dennis Mwenda, 2012 champion Nadim Kana from Mombasa, and Leonardo Vatse, who won the Machakos Rally last month, will be expected to offer quality opposition. Others in this category include two all-female crews of Haraka Mamas and Divas on Wheels. Currently, defending champion Baldev Chaga leads the 2014 KCB Kenya National Rally Championships with 140 points after finishing second at the KCB Malindi Rally and winning the KCB Machakos Rally. Moses Swahisi, KTN Sports.
Indeed, and we have been talking about the lessons learned from 2013 and facing 2017. Are we ready to make the election a smoother process come that time? What was our big question tonight?
Absolutely. We did ask you whether you think the IEBC should be disbanded, and here is your verdict. 54% of you disagree. 46% of you agree with that, almost split down the middle.
That's right. And of course, matters of election, always an emotional discussion. Let's take your feedback tonight. Ndungu Wakaryuki on Twitter, you say, why disband IEBC for an outstanding performance in very difficult circumstances?
Absolutely. There's another one here from Omboto Momanyi. Unless foreign experts are brought in, otherwise there's no Kenyan angel than Kivuitu and Hassan.
Indeed, and here's another one. I'm trying to find one that will talk about this. It seems like there's a lot of people asking about having a foreign person heading our electoral body. Patrick Napil, you say, it is true, Kenyans are so tribal and lack self-confidence. A foreign chairman will set good goals.
Margaret at Maggie Masharia says, no, the IEBC did a good job in spite of the pressure. Politicizing its performance kills democracy.
Indeed, we thank you so much for your views tonight. We've been discussing the process of elections in the country, and we'll continue to take a look at this, some of the lessons learned, and what we can do to make the electoral process better and better every single time we have elections in this country.
The conversation continues on Twitter.
It does.
The hashtag is facing 2017.
Yes.
It's trending right now on Twitter.
It is. We thank you so much for your feedback, and thank you for contributing to our discussion tonight. Have a very good night. My name is Yvonne Okwara. We'll see you tomorrow.
Wilson Buru, enjoy the rest of your viewing.